Are you having fun so far? Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
absolutely.
This is pretty loud.
Yeah, it's pretty tough lights as well.
You need exercise?
I think they had enough.
Good.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Our topic today is upgrading the workplace. So, my name is Teemu Arina. I'm the technology specialist of the Biohacker's Handbook project. And then we have Dr. Olli Sovijärvi, who is the medical brain, the health dimension. And Jaakko is someone who is looking at wellness, longevity, food, nutrition, with extremely wide open eyes. Oh yeah. So our book has 5 chapters: exercise, nutrition, sleep, mind, and work. This book is out now in Finnish. It's available at the Biohacker Center stand, or 1,500 references, hundreds of illustrations, 4 years of work, or 500 pages concentrated. It's the missing manual for the human body. And this is massive work. And the way how it started was pretty much that I was doing what many of you in the audience do, which is like killing myself with work. I was just like putting the hours in, trying to live my dream, and in the end I got an ulcer, and I suffered from that stress-related illness for 9 months. I got medication from the medical doctor, and it just didn't heal, so I had to do basically, I had to face myself, look into the mirror, see myself with new eyes. And in that journey, I met these 2 gentlemen who have changed my life, and I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, thanks. Teemu actually came to my office to see that he has been healed himself from a gastric ulcer. So I was pretty impressed by the guy, and he also had these like 20 different gadgets. So that's how our journey began. And Jaakko I met a bit earlier. We have been lecturing in the same events, and Jaakko has been my guy if I want to ask something about nutrition or emotional tracking.
Yeah. So let's take a look at what our typical day looks like. Oh yeah, that's how we work, and most of the book has actually been written in Finnish nature while doing cold plunges and going to saunas and eating when we feel like, and without interruption, without social media, without modern technology. That's pretty much how we've done it. And today's topic that we're going to be focusing on is work. And I really like this little passage from James Blanchard in his unpublished works in the interview with God. Basically, the question to the God is, what surprises you most about humankind? And God answers that they lose their health to make money, and then they lose their money to restore their health. That they live as if they will never die, and die as if they never lived. And this, unfortunately, is the tragedy that a lot of people go through. They are killing themselves with the work that they do. Basically, you work 10 years to gain wealth. Then you work the rest of your life to gain back your health. And that's the unfortunate situation where we are.
Yeah. Personally, I've been there. I've seen it, what the young medical doctor are supposed to be performing, like doing hundreds of hours per week, going from different place to a different place, driving around the country, being on call like 36 hours in a row. That's no life. But it was a good experience. Now I know better. Now I have this experience, and I know what I really want, and I know where I want to go. And if you follow this, what is your ikigai? What's your passion? What you've been paid for? What do you think the world actually needs? And what are you good at? If you can combine these things, then you're probably on the right path.
I think ikigai translates pretty much to reason for being. Being, not doing. So in a sense, I think many people kind of have to climb that high mountain to see how not tall it actually is. But health is a state of being. It's a kind of emotional space, and I think that we should align ourselves more directly into it. And that's kind of the problem that we are now having. We need to go the circle around to remind ourselves that it's the state of being that we carry around every moment.
That's right. One thing that I discovered while diving deep into quantified self and observing myself with modern technologies was that it's not really the new things that you could do to change your life, like a diet or an exercise program or so on, but it's what you do today repeatedly. What is your morning routine? What choices do you make when you have an opportunity to have a break? And or to eat something, you go to a conference, you go to the company cafeteria, whatever. What choices, small choices you make every day, that's what really makes you. And if we look deep into our nervous system, how we are programmed to, get more dopamine, which is a signaling molecule telling us that, yeah, this is good shit. And we get addicted to mobile devices and browsing the Facebook timeline. The whole Silicon Valley is focused on using algorithms, artificial intelligence, and just like ingenious design in software to hook us into these tools that tap into our kind of primitive needs to be connected. So every great man has always had some routines, and all of us have different ones, that's for sure. That's what links all great authors and scientists and so on. But the thing is that you need some routines, but some of those routines, some of those patterns of behavior are good for you, and some of them might not be that good for you. We all know that, and we also have the term addiction kind of referring to the things that are not necessarily healthy for you. So when we look at this, you are what you repeat. You eat, you train, you work, you love, you sleep, you repeat yourself. Yeah.
And you can upgrade all these things. What do you think of what an upgrade means? Do you have any idea? It's a fancy word, upgrade yourself. What does it actually mean? It means to be in harmony. It means to be in touch with yourself. It means to be self-aware where you are at the moment. So that's the key. And then you can define and think what I'm gonna do next. What are my next steps? But you have to be self-aware. Right. Without being self-aware, you cannot do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, for example, many of you are probably very familiar with the podcast of Tim Ferriss, and I like the idea of what are your morning rituals. Just because we build momentum when we get that space where we feel more vivid and alive, if we get that going early on in the day, then the momentum goes on. And I think that's why it's good to kind of build that system up, that it's easier for yourself to keep that place.
Jaakko, what did you do this morning?
This morning I woke up like 10 past 10, very late, totally like, what's going on? And the only thing that I actually get to do was the cold shower. So I think that's one of the routines that I try to keep up every day when I'm not around lake or something.
So all of us have different routines, and it's very hard to kind of separate some of these things. Even if we focus on work, it actually ties all of these different aspects together. We did a project called the Upgraded Workplace, and we first made kind of like a normal week, a typical week for people, and we measured everything we could, from blood pressure to recovery to stress levels to body composition to mood, air quality, etc., activity, the difference and different proportions of sitting to standing to walking and all those things. And then we designed, together with medical doctor and the nutrition specialist and this personal trainer and some biohackers, that week again. So we didn't touch the content of the work, but we touched the patterns around it. And we were able to reduce blood pressure, increase mood, and just like general feeling of well-being and getting stuff done, even though the load of work was the same. So sometimes just changing the environment changes the way how you relate to your work. So it's not necessarily a problem with the amount of work that you do or the work itself. It might be the context in which it happens. So I've been measuring and tracking myself for quite some time, and if you track your sleep, it's kind of surprising that I have actually more information of my night than I have of my day. So I started measuring my day as well, looking at my calendar and use of technology. And there's a tool called Rescue Time that enables you to track how much you use computer and what kind of applications you use and which one of those you feel productive with. And then you can have an application like Moment on your phone. So what Moment does is every time you unlock your phone, it will track that moment, and it gives you an idea how much you use phone in general. It doesn't really tell you which apps you use, but it tells you something about the use. And when you put these two together, you see basically how much you sleep, how much you're with phone, how much you're with your computer, and how much you're spending the rest of your free time. And if we start from sleep, basically, I mean, the biological rhythm is extremely important for just like keeping the clock in sync and different patterns in our lives that kind of intertwine around it. And sleep is super important. What happens in the deep phases of sleep, that's the most restorative part of the sleep, because kind of the moment when the body flushes out all the metabolic byproducts, the toxic waste that accumulates in your brain, through the lymphatic system, which name is lymphatic system, because it's mediated by glial cells in the brain. This is very new information.
This is actually a pretty new finding. If you see medical textbooks and you look at the brain, the immune system and the lymphatic system, it stops here. But the researchers found actually about 2 years ago that there's actually lymphatic system in the brain. So it's helping to flush different toxins, for example, beta amyloid plaques, which actually can prevent Alzheimer's disease. So it's pretty interesting, and this is one of the reasons why we need to sleep. If you think about deep sleep, you also need REM sleep. Jaakko, what is REM sleep good for? Why do you need to have a REM?
I actually think that this measurement instruments are not very accurate on REM sleep because your rapid eye movement, and I don't know sensors that actually measure that. But the point is that it's not how long you sleep, but how well you sleep. And you need to get those cycles to really get your brain back on. That's for me the
research says that the deep sleep should be around 20% of the total sleep time, and REM sleep should be between 20 and 40% of that night sleep. And REM sleep is when you consolidate learnings from the day to the long-term memories. If you don't sleep long enough, that's in the end of the sleeping cycles. That's when you get REM sleep. You don't necessarily learn as much. So even if you work a lot, you're not really investing in your own future. So if you sleep enough, you're investing in yourself and in your future. You can actually nap and get a little bit of REM sleep and consolidate memories. And this is something that I use often when I learn something difficult new, maybe an instrument or whatever. I just take a nap on top of it.
Yeah, napping should be available at any workplace. How many of you do nap? The light is shining straight to my eyes. Yeah, so you probably have noticed that you are feeling refreshed after that. I use napping all the time, especially when I treat patients. I go home and I say to my wife, okay, now it's time for my brain boot. I call it brain boot. So, and she knows it. I'm in a better mood. I feel totally refreshed, even though I had like difficult patients.
And you can tell this also to your employee. If you are sleeping on the sofa at the office, you just tell you're just doing your work here. You're investing in the future of the company. So, you can do all kinds of things in your bedroom, and we have all the information, the Biohacker's Handbook, the sleep chapter. It's a free download at biohackingbook.com, what you can kind of do there. But if we go deeper into what happens at the workplace, so you should expand your perspective on ergonomics. Ergonomics is not just the physical ergonomics. How do you use, an ergonomic working position, or how people relate to tools, but it's also cognitive ergonomics and how you recover and how do you make sure that you can maintain productivity and performance and also not kill yourself in the process. And talking about killing yourself, mobile device posture. When you're just looking down, it's pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty
it's
bad
actually
for you.
called a text neck, and it's been researched that even kids only 7 years old have this text neck. So they have like anterior tilt of the thoracic spine, and that's causing a lot of problems. The intervertebrate discs are actually being degenerated, and it's pretty alarming to have things like that when you're 7 years old.
Yeah, early on having disc problems, and also just like even if you sit on a chair, the kind of pressure you're getting into your discs, there's a big difference what kind of position you take. Yeah. And it's very typical for people to just lean a lot forward when they're on their computer.
Actually, the best angle would be around 130 degrees. So it's not in the picture, but it's been researched that that's probably the most convenient way to sit. So if you find yourself doing like this, you're probably going in there naturally. But of course, standing and combining with good posture in sitting, that's probably the best.
Yeah. And I think that the pressure thing is very important in every sense, like we were talking about lymphatic system and all the whole cardiovascular system. Like how little pressure do you need to kind of cut off that veins circulation? So every time when it's possible to kind of loosen up your clothing or just sit with less pressure, that's a good idea.
Less pressure on your cardiovascular system, but also less pressure on lymphatic system and nerves and so on. So sitting is not very good for you. It's kind of like we have been taught that that's a natural resting position, but it's shortening our hip reflexors.
Yeah.
So the thing is that you should definitely do the rolling thing that Ben was demonstrating earlier. Yeah. And when you rest, it's really good to do this stuff once in a while. It's also really good for the back.
Yeah. If you watch kids, like kids who have been able to walk, and they naturally they're sitting like in this position, and they are playing around and going up and down very easily in a perfect posture. So that's natural, but we are losing it because we are sitting too much.
Standing desks are not necessarily the solution. You can also have pretty problematic things coming out of just sitting long periods of time. So the point is really to alterate position. Sometimes be sitting, and if you sit, you should sit on the very front kind of ledge of the chair. You can try now. Just take a very front one and find your sitting bones and sit on that that's a pretty good way to sit actually, instead of having the pressure on your soft tissues and which is increasing pressure in the organs. So that's one thing. So changing the position and maybe sometimes using a saddle chair like Salli is here is pretty cool product. But even more important to fix your ergonomics is not just this thing, but it's your indoor climate.
Yeah, I think this is a big topic that pops up all the time. After lectures, for years, somebody comes up with thyroid problems or gut health issues. But over the past few years, at least here in Finland, all the mold problems have just went crazy. So that's one thing that I'm always kind of interested is why we don't pay as much attention to these primary things as to some small details. So in the spaces where you spend most of your time, where you sleep, where you work, the air quality, that's like the water that we live in. So you just want to make sure that there is no mold, some kind of air purifier, you can use plants. That's a hugely important thing because if there's too much carbon dioxide in the air, it makes us dumb, literally. There's a lot of science around this and it's super important for our cognition to have actually really good air.
Right on. So start from your working environment, and one thing that you can also do is to diffuse, if you have like mold problems, perhaps you suspect some of those, you could put some essential oils into a diffuser that is increasing the humidity. At this time of the year, it's a super good idea anyway to humidify the air a little bit, so you alleviate the pressure on your sinuses. But something like rosmarinic oil and acid basically is pretty good thing to put in there because it will kill some nasties in the air in the process.
Yeah, and lavender oil is one if you want to wind down in the evening. It's actually lowering your cortisol response, and I don't know. Some people do work in the evenings too. So if you want to wind down, you wear like glasses like this. Yeah. These are not just for style; they're actually pretty good.
Swannies, pretty cool.
I wouldn't wear them daytime because I want to get some blue light too. But especially in the evening time, it's really good.
Yeah. So actually, what I've done with my own working environment is to bring the forest back in there. So I have the soundscapes, like ambient soundscape. You can listen with the headphones, also some binaural beats. That's what I'm often listening when I want to get into a zone of creativity. And then I just have like diffusing forest, pine, oils, etc., and just like having these plants around and HEPA filters. But when we dive deep into the work that we do today, the question is what kind of fuel should you use? So if you look at someone even in an agricultural society, basically, working his land, what would that person eat compared to someone who is working their brain, sitting in front of the computer? And this is something where we have to really, start rethinking our diets that come from pretty recent past.
Yeah, and I think it's the same idea that we are pretty aware if we train more, we need to eat probably more protein, this and that. But almost nobody thinks very deeply that if you are looking at the computer screen the whole day, you need to feed your eyes, you need to feed that whole system. And I'm devastated that, for example, the level of certain carotenoids or zeaxanthin and stuff like that in our eyes are very low at this point. So we need to have a protocol for our brain, for our eyes, for our nervous system to actually be able to manage this type of stuff for the long term.
Yeah. So as you see in the picture, blueberries or more specifically bilberries, like wild bilberries, they're being researched for their content and especially anthocyanin, which gives the blue color. They're really good for memory, really good for brain function, actually preventing...
it's kind of, you get two benefits of recovery and nootropics by
good for
having
eyes
a few
too.
hundred grams of blueberries. Then there is blood sugar control. I mean, there's a big difference what kind of food you are eating and how it hits your sugar levels in your bloodstream. And maintaining steady blood sugar levels is essential, because if you just like have too fast-acting carbohydrates coming into your system too much at one time, insulin kicks in and it makes you very tired after a few hours. And if you start your morning with a glass of orange juice and some porridge, it's guaranteed 2 hours after that you're ready to kill someone to get food. And but if you maintain your blood sugar levels very delicately, then you will avoid those kind of crashes and cravings at the same time. And looking at the optimal blood sugar levels, I mean, if you're just spiking constantly, searching for the ceiling, that's when you're increasing your risk for diabetes.
This is a slide you won't find anywhere else except our book. Because
I didn't know that.
this like a normal diabetic range, it's very high. As you see, a very high response for glucose or carbs or protein. The normal, it's supposed to be like recommended. That's not optimal for health. The lower you have these spikes and the more stable it is. That's also good for anti-aging. It's good for actually everything. I actually dreamed, like last night, I had a dream about blood sugar regulation. That's pretty weird. I don't know if it was because of this presentation, but it showed, 4.4 to 5.3, okay, this is going to be optimal.
I think in the future we will have real-time information like that. It's not just for diabetics. I think this is going to be the biggest kind of revolution in quantified self when it comes to people who work, because you will be able to optimize your energy levels with the food that you take and become more conscious about how different things spike your blood sugar levels. Right now, there is FDA, is clearing out some of these devices. They're not very well available for consumers yet, but I think even with 30% deviation from the norm is okay for people who don't have diabetes to figure out where their blood sugar levels on average are kind of fluctuating. So I think even if we have inaccuracy a little bit built into these things, they will be extremely beneficial to people. Just like activity trackers don't track your steps clearly enough, but it will be useful for you to become aware of what's going on. And there are some hacks that you can then deploy to balance your blood sugar levels. What are your favorites?
Well, I think last night we did an upgraded dinner. We did pretty epic decoction out of mushrooms and put nettles and all that in. So for me at this part of the year, it's a pretty typical day to start with some kind of a medicinal mushroom brew. So chaga goes in, reishi goes in, and these glucan structures actually work synergistically. So I like to mix up a lot of different medicinal mushrooms and use that base liquid. Throw that in Vitamix, put in cacao powder, cinnamon, ginger. Those goodies have high chromium content. Cinnamon and ginger especially, that's one of the reasons why it's good for your blood sugar levels. Coconut oil to get the energy and everything like that. So that could be kind of an alternative for a coffee in the morning. And I do like a liter of that and sip that for an hour or so, and that's great for your energy levels.
If you look at coffee, I mean, many of us have like a cup of coffee after eating, which is actually a very good practice, Mediterranean practice, always having a cup of coffee, kind of blood sugar level stabilizing. But some of us are a bit oversensitive to the effects of coffee, and you should check that gene, CYP1A2, and figure out if your caffeine metabolism is kind of playing against you. And blood pressure is another deal here as well. But also the pressure inside the eye is another one. So if you have macular degeneration or any kind of eye problems in your family lineage, drinking coffee might increase your risk for those. So you definitely should get your blueberries. Or you could look for some alternatives. And you could even look at hacking your cup of coffee. This is like upgraded coffee on steroids, kind of using the medicinal mushrooms and different blood sugar stabilizing agents and theanine to counteract the negative effects of coffee and so on, and even like bringing cacao extracts in it to even kind of add a little more boost and stabilize the brew even more, so that the effect is not so pronounced, or the crash is not so pronounced. My
favorite for colder time of the year is mixing some of this stuff with good fats and coffee, good quality coffee, but I also put a lot of cinnamon I put a little bit of cayenne pepper, a little bit of black pepper, a little bit of turmeric.
Thermogenic things.
Yeah, so it's thermogenic. I feel a lot warmer. I actually feel a lot clearer in the head. So you should go by what's actually happening outside, what's happening in your environment, and regulate your nutrition, regulate your habits, your drinking stuff, not doing the same thing over and over again.
How many of you have put curcumin in your coffee? A few. It's a pretty good idea because you get the anti-inflammatory effect at the same time. So you could think you repeat drinking coffee every day. What can I add in there that improves my health in different ways? So it's kind of like being a purist. Drinking a cup of coffee is meant only to be like that. I mean, yeah, if you're just going for the taste and so on, but if you're going for effect, you definitely want to start experimenting. And matcha is a pretty good choice as well.
Yeah. I think there are so many alternatives that I'd hope people to play around more, whether it was yerba mate or Ilex Quaisa or many other of these things. But for me, I feel like just coffee is very like you get into it, like very immersed. And with teas or mate or whatever, your mind gets stimulated, but you're observing the situation from a bit longer distance. So I found that very fascinating for writing or something where it's good to have that zoomed out also in. But yeah, yerba mate is definitely one of my favorites this time of the year because the thermogenic effect warms the body even better than many teas that I found.
Yeah, and the combination of what's in chocolate, what's in green tea, what's in coffee, caffeine, theobromine, theophylline, put together, and on top of that, some medicinal properties of saponins. I mean, it's good to explore outside of your traditional brew. And like another thing that everyone should try is just a little bit of intermittent fasting. If you've never done a fast, 24 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, try it out. You might witness an increased sense of perception because from an evolutionary perspective, when you don't have food available, your biology makes you better at finding food. So it increases, your higher functions, and you become a bit more stressed, and you get information more easily, and you're a bit sensitive. But that's, helping you to find food, and you definitely should try that out. But you can do like fasting in a way that is not, making you irritated for too much. And that intermittent fasting is one way to do it. You can use MCT oils and so on to trigger that faster as well. And if you want to measure some of these things, here are the optimal ketone levels. If you have a ketone level device, you can use to measure that. So figure out what is the optimal zone for brain function and performance.
Yeah, one thing I would want to add in the intermittent fasting is that if you have any stomach problems, if you have the so-called IBS, which is the irritable bowel syndrome, it's actually good that you're not putting stuff there all the time. For example, myself, I've been found intermittent fasting being the best way of silencing my gut and making it a little bit more relaxed. And so that's also evolutionary. If you think about hunting and gathering, people don't eat breakfast. They first hunt and gather the food, and then they have a feast. So that's actually natural. And in the research, it's been found out that it's actually making effects in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is regulating the circadian rhythms of different hormones and our waking and going to sleep cycle. So that's good for also that reason.
Yeah. I think it also works very well if you're a bit sleep deprived, like me putting this conference together. Upgrade dinner went quite late last night, and I had some difficulty falling asleep. So today I've been intermittent fasting because I know that if I dump a bunch of glucose into my system right now, I'm just going to pass out. So I'm not doing it.
And I think one of the cool toys to play around in these situations is to add more bitter things to your diet. Those bitter notes are very good for suppressing your appetite. So for me, if you start to drink or sip some type of a very bitter drink in the morning, you can keep on going for quite a long time. So that's a helpful tool. Spices, herbs.
When you worked on the field, the focus was on glucose, getting good amount of sugar into your system so that you can pump up that energy. But your brain is made out of fat. 60% of that is fat, especially DHA is in cerebral cortex and in retina. So you may want to look at your omega-3 intake. And we mentioned eyes also earlier. It increases your likely there's some research that shows it's kind of still out there if it will increase your ability to see in the dark also. There is something going on with the cells in the eyes. And finally, when you look at work, stress is a big factor. Stress is linked to all kinds of degenerative diseases that we have today. And Olli, at your office, what are the typical cases that come because of work? What are side effects?
It's a guy or a woman like that. So many people are very exhausted. They are totally fatigued because they've been burning up the candle from the both ends for like tens of years. So that's a typical patient, and the consequences is that different body systems are failing apart. So stress is actually the most common cause of any disease. Some approximates are that 90 to 95% of all disease are due to chronic stress.
And stress is actually a good thing. It's partly why we do stuff and we give presentations and we go to meetings and in the morning you also wake up because of cortisol, the stress hormone. But if you don't have cortisol production, you're not going to wake up. So it's important, but being too much in the sympathetic nervous system activated state is not good for your immune system. It's not good for your health in long term. So you may want to get some parasympathetic nervous system activation into your system. And here is just a measurement from First Beat that is also here is the different. So on red you see the sympathetic nervous system activation, on green you see the recovery parasympathetic nervous system activation. During sleep you usually get a lot of that. If you want to factor some of that into your day, you have to actually consciously do it, consciously have a break, and we're going to tell you in a moment which kind of techniques work. But most people, they just burn the candle from both ends. I've been there, and I've definitely witnessed the consequences of that. So you just you don't give yourself a break, and in the evening when you go to sleep, your nervous system is kind of on overdrive. It's kind of expecting something to happen all the time, and you have difficulty falling asleep. So having all these rituals in your daily routine that enables you to kind of calm down every moment you can. Like in this conference, we have the sleeping capsule, we have the headphones, we have the cold thermogenesis outside. But learning deep breathing techniques is probably one of the best things that you can learn. If you never learn to breathe, take a yoga class, take some meditation class, whatever, and learn the basics of, let's say, pranayama breathing exercises or box breathing. And it's going to do wonders, because once you do deep breathing exercises, once your breathing rate per minute goes down, your heart rate goes down, your heart rate variability goes up. You can measure this with different tools and techniques that are out there.
Breathing is the first thing I see on my patients when they are stressed out. And most of them are breathing like this. only in the upper lungs, and it's very fast. It's not like slow diaphragmatic breathing. So that's the first thing. You can actually see if people are stressed out, they're like this. That's unconscious, but that's actually a relief. When you have a very long expiration,
like after sauna.
That's relieving the stress. So we can all do like...
Let's do another one.
And especially now when you go for a lunch, we need that parasympathetic tonus to absorb nutrients. And this is a big difficulty for people. You have your sympathetic nervous system running on, you try to eat, and even if the food is good quality, you don't absorb as much. So during the workday, have at least a few breaks where you cut down the stimulus for your visual cortex, and also the noise cancellation might be a good idea to actually relax and go to that space and not just to chatter with people and relax, but actually deeply relax.
One hack I do in the middle of the day with patients. After lunch, if I eat lunch, I go and lie down for 10 minutes. I close my eyes, put on the noise cancelling headphones, put a little bit of nice sound, and then I just relax and breathe. And after that, I'm again all fresh. So it takes only 5 minutes is enough.
I used the spike mat last evening just to increase some endorphins in my system. So learn the recovery things. That's actually more important than learning the productivity things, I think. It applies for both people who work cognitively demanding jobs and also people who work their bodies like athletes. Recovery is half of your training. Recovery is half of the work that you do. Thank you so much. Go hack yourself.
Thank you.
How about a hand for the authors of the Biohacker Handbook? There we go.
Boys.
All right.
All right. I think we went over a little bit of our
It's okay, I came here
but we have a little bit of time.
Nobody has questions,
Q&A, right?
read the book.
Yeah, it's all in the book.
So questions, ladies and gentlemen, for these three handsome gentlemen.
There's a... Yeah.
Why did you recommend light or medium roasted coffee versus dark?
So the question was, why do you recommend
Can you use the
light
microphone?
versus dark roast?
Hey, not working. Thanks for the amazing lecture. I wanted to know that about this coffee slide. You recommended light or medium roasted versus dark. Why is that?
To my understanding, it actually depends on the bean variety. So with Arabica coffee, to my understanding, actually the dark roast, even though it lowers down some of the phenolic compounds, the overall kind of antioxidant capacity comes up. So I'm not sure if there was any other angle, but I like to go with the darker roasts myself. And there's some science to back that up, but
at the same time, with dark roast, you're increasing the occurrence of these carcinogenic compounds, advanced glycation end products like and acrylamide, for example, and those are linked to be carcinogenic. So I mean, kind of you get these flavor compounds, but they might not be good for you. The jury is still out there on these things, so maybe you don't want to go every day, every time with the dark roast, even if you like it that much. Take a light one once in a while, or even green beans.
So it's the same Maillard reaction that comes to a steak when you burn it or whatever. So there's both sides into that.
Next up. More questions? All right.
Thank you very much for the presentation. The question is, what might be the best balance in time that you spend working, sitting, moving, sleeping? Like your perfect advice. What would be the time?
We start from sleep. I mean, the research says 7 to 8 hours, but there are individual differences. There's some genetic differences. Some people get with less sleep. It also depends the state of inflammation in your body and the amount of recovery you need. People who sleep more than 10 hours, etc., often there might be an inflammatory disease there underlying that is causing it. Definitely when I had my ulcer, I had to sleep more. If you exercise a lot, you need more sleep. So all these factors in, but on average 7 to 8 hours. But what would you say about posture?
I think in Japan they have a nice rule of thumb. For every hour you spend at the office, take 5 minutes in nature. So that's something, if you'd actually do that, that would be excellent for everyone.
Yeah, for like an hour in nature, that's restoring your functions in the body. I don't think there is any rules to that. I like to stand in my office with patients. Somebody like to sit, and then I sit. So maybe 50-50 of standing and sitting in first, and then you can find what's good for you. And you can actually walk. Walking is even better if possible.
Right on. So I think we're pretty good here, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how about a big hand for the three biohacker authors?